Hello, I'm David Stredwick, the Wine Club Manager for Howard Park Wines, and I'm here with our Chief Winemaker, Janice McDonald. We're talking about Howard Park's icon Cabernet Sauvignon, the 2017 vintage of the Abercrombie Cabernet Sauvignon. Janice, 2017 was a pretty interesting vintage. I remember it well as being a vintage that was pretty cool, and then really during harvest time there was some very difficult periods where it was raining and it was very hard, I think, for wineries or winemakers to judge when they wanted to pick the fruit. Do I go now or do I wait and try and develop more flavour in the Cabernet? What's that experience like as a winemaker for you? Is that part of the most difficult part of being a winemaker, is at that point in harvest where you're thinking, do I pick the fruit now or do I wait? What's that tension like for you?
Yeah, it is quite a difficult time. I guess over time I have been the sort to wait. It's almost like it's the opportunity that you have. It's the once in a year opportunity, and it's better to wait. I do have the backup of our viticulturalist David Botting, whom I have enormous sort of respect for, and puts so much sort of importance on his thoughts of what's happening in the vineyard. So that's really important to me. And at times, if I know Dave's not hassling me to pick grapes, then it's a good time to wait. And Cabernet, interestingly, can be one of the most difficult varieties to know when to pick, because what you're really looking for when you're looking for ripe Cabernet is not necessarily a sweetness of fruit. I'm really looking for ripe tannins, because ripe tannins are the things that will give you a wine that will age well and be a really enjoyable drink, whether it's a young wine or an older wine.
And I think that's an interesting point to make in terms of Abercrombie. As it's our ultimate wine and a wine that we make to quality rather than to necessity, it needs to fit into the heritage of the wine that we've been making for nearly 35 vintages and the style. So essentially, if it wasn't going to work in 2017, there may not have been a wine, but thankfully, obviously it did.
I guess we make our lives a little bit harder for ourselves, because we are sort of making parcels of wine that hopefully will end up in Abercrombie that come from two different, very, very different sub-regions. In a sense, Margaret River is a lot easier. It's much warmer. The climate will ripen Cabernet very easily, very readily, whereas the Great Southern, and particularly our Mount Barker vineyard, the Abercrombie vineyard, the climate is cooler, it's a much slower process, there's more waiting. So, we even set ourselves a bigger challenge when it comes to sort of trying to ripen Cabernet in both those regions that are going to be suitable for Abercrombie.
It's interesting, and as you say, Abercrombie is a multi-regional blend. The 2017 is a blend. 53% of the fruit is from the Leston Vineyard in Margaret River, and 47% of the fruit is from our Abercrombie Vineyard in Mount Barker. You've talked about the sort of regional characteristics of those vineyards. In terms of the parcels themselves and their flavour characteristics, what do the regions bring to the wine in terms of their flavour and structural elements?
I think, we'll start with structural elements, and the Mount Barker region has beautiful structure. It has great length. It has greater finesse, a tightness and a fineness. So it's not really a wine of great generosity. But for our generosity, obviously we come to Margaret River, where you have that beautiful generosity, sweet core of tight black and red berry fruits. And so that's really the core. And then sort of that overlay of that lovely length and structure and linearity that comes from Abercrombie, from that vineyard in the Great Southern.
Fantastic. A unique West Australian blend. Talking about making the wine, what are the key sort of winemaking techniques for Abercrombie, looking at things like fermentation and then maturation in oak?
Because this is a small, very special wine, most of our fermentation is done in quite small vessels, so they'll be either open vessels or they'll be closed fermenters, but they're quite small. We allow the extraction to pretty much work for itself. We're not really looking to work the skins particularly hard. We just want that natural sort of evolution of skins to soften, flavours to leach out of the skins to give us a lovely tannin profile. And after we press all these parcels, and they're pressed separately, they're kept separately, they all go into barriques, and they're the very small barrels. And this is one that we definitely indulge ourselves on when it comes to oak, so we use the very finest, the very best, and most of the time the most expensive oak that's available to really suit this Cabernet.
Fantastic. You've been involved with Howard Park now, you're working on your 10th vintage, so You've made 9 vintages of Abercrombie because there was no Abercrombie produced in 2015. Is there a wine or two in that span that you've been involved with Abercrombie that really stands out to you in terms of the vintage, the wine at the time, or how the wine's looking now?
To me, the 13 is a very beautiful wine. It has all those characters that we've spoken of, from the Leston Vineyard, from the Great Southern Vineyard, the nature of the vineyard, the vintage. It wasn't a particularly hot vintage, and also not particularly cold, so a lovely sort of moderate vintage. And you see the expression of all those elements in that wine. And with a few years of age on it, it's coming together beautifully. And then coming to this wine, which is really quite exciting. You spoke of the quite cool conditions of 2017. So I am extraordinarily happy in such a challenging vineyard, or vintage I should say, that we've managed to make such a beautiful wine. The elegance is there from the Great Southern, there's the richness of fruit from Margaret River, and there's ripeness, which we were terribly concerned we would not have enough ripeness in 2017. But you can see in this wine we have beautiful ripeness, beautiful length, lovely finesse.
A fantastic, striking freshness to this wine. But knowing it's an Abercrombie and it has that pedigree, it's going to have the longevity to last in your cellar probably for up to 30 years. So it's an exciting proposition in that respect.
Cheers. Dave.